Hi guys, welcome to Skholar IAS, your one-stop solution for IAS preparation. Myself Biswajit, your faculty for Geography. So in the last class we have finished with the topic of climate in India, and today we are going to start off with a new topic which is called as the natural vegetation and wildlife. Hi guys, so today we are starting off with a new topic which will be your chapter number 5 from class 9 NCERT of Geography. And as you can see, the name of the topic is your natural vegetation and wildlife. Now this topic is very factual in nature and it's a combination of both geography as well as environment, right? So we will deal with this topic very briefly, and when we move on to our environment and ecology subject, we will talk in more details about it, right? So what are we going to study today? So basically we will begin by giving you a brief introduction about today's topic, which is your natural vegetation. Then moving on, we will also talk about your different factors which affects the type of vegetation that is found in a particular place. Alright, then briefly we will also understand the topic of ecosystem or the concept of ecosystem or what is an ecosystem, right? And lastly we will also talk about your different types of natural vegetation that we see, and then we will conclude by understanding about your wildlife as well, right? So these are the brief agendas that we are going to deal in today's class. Fine. So let us begin by giving you a brief introduction about today's topic. Fine. So what is the first point? Our country India is considered to be one of the 12 mega biodiversity countries of the world. Now remember, the data which are in NCERT is a little outdated. Alright, so during the contemporary times there are in total 17 mega biodiversity countries, and India is considered to be one of these 17 countries. Alright, fine. Then with about your 47,000 plant species found in India, India occupies 10th place in the world and 4th in Asia in terms of plant diversity. Again, a very important point, right? So with 47,000 plant species, what is the rank of India in the world in terms of plant species? It is 10th in the world and 4th in Asia. Fine. And there are about your 15,000 flowering plants in India, which accounts for 6% in the world's total number of flowering plants. Alright. Then the country has many non-flowering plants as well, like we have your ferns, we have algae, we have fungi, right? And India also has approximately about your 90,000 species of animals as well as rich variety of fish in its fresh as well as your marine waters, right? So this is the brief introduction about the kind of diversity we see in India in terms of both your flora as well as your fauna. Fine. Now this topic about your 12 mega biodiversities, or which has increased to 17 mega biodiversities, this is very important, but we will deal with this topic more extensively when we go to environment and ecology subject, right? Now let us understand about what is natural vegetation. Fine. So this is what we will understand. So natural vegetation basically refers to a plant community which has grown naturally without human aid and has been left undisturbed by humans for a long period of time, right? So the plant species which are growing in a particular area without any external influence or without any human interference, we call this as natural vegetation. But on the other hand, we grow crops, right? So crops cannot be considered as a part of natural vegetation because crops are grown with the help of human intervention. Understood what is natural vegetation? Fine. So this is termed as your virgin vegetation as well. Alright. Thus, cultivated crops and fruits, your orchards form part of vegetation but not natural vegetation, like I have already explained, right? So the term flora is used to denote plants of a particular region or in a particular period, right? And similarly, the species of animals are referred to as your fauna. So your flora refers to your plant species and your fauna refers to animal species, right? Simple. Then the term flora is used to denote plants of a particular, okay, this point we have already gone through, right? Then this huge diversity and flora and fauna kingdom is due to various factors. Now you have to understand what are the different factors which determines the type of natural vegetation which we will find in a particular location, right? So in this slide we have understood about what is natural vegetation. Now let us look into the factors which talks about its presence. So the first factor that a natural vegetation or a type of natural vegetation which will be found in a particular place will depend upon the land of that particular area. So your land affects the natural vegetation both directly as well as indirectly. The nature of land influences the type of vegetation which will be found in that particular location. The fertile level is generally devoted to agriculture, fine, and the undulating or a rough terrain are areas where grasslands and woodlands develop and give shelter to a wide variety of wildlife. Now land, if I have to talk about, now there will be certain lands which are very fertile. So if a land is fertile, what will I do? In those places, me as a human, I will be trying to grow crops there, right? But if there is an undulating and a rough terrain where agriculture is not possible, humans will allow the natural vegetation to thrive in that particular location, right? So in an undulating and a rough terrain, these are areas where you will find grasslands and woodlands, right? Which are nothing but different varieties of your natural vegetation, right? And in these areas we will also see wide variety of wildlife presence, right? Then the next factor upon which our natural vegetation depends upon is the soil of that particular location, right? So your soil also vary over space, because we can have alluvial soil, we can have black soil, we can have red soil, we can have swampy areas where the soil is different, right? So your different types of soils will provide the basis for different types of vegetation, fine. And the sandy soils, for an example of the desert regions, supports your cactus and thorny bushes. Meaning what? Meaning in areas where we see the presence of sandy soils, what kind of vegetation will be found there? We will find there thorn type of vegetation or thorn forest and scrubs, right? We will find this in these particular areas. But on the other hand, if there is a wet, marshy and a deltaic soil present, these areas will have presence of mangroves as well as your deltaic vegetation. So depending upon the type of soil, your natural vegetation will also keep on changing, right? And then if we have a hilly slope area with some depth of soil, they will have what kind of vegetation? We will have conical type of trees or your conical vegetation, fine. All right. Then what is the next factor upon which your natural vegetation depends upon? It depends upon the temperature which is found in a particular location. Now the character and extent of vegetation are mainly determined by temperature along with humidity in the air, precipitation as well as soil. So these are the main factors upon which your natural vegetation depends upon. Now on the slopes of the Himalayas and the hills of the peninsula above the height of 915 meters, the fall in the temperature affects the type of vegetation and its growth and changes it from tropical to subtropical, temperate, and then we have alpine vegetation. Meaning if this is for an example a mountain, so the type of vegetation which will be found along the base of the Himalayas or in the peninsular hills, what will happen? In this type of or along the base we will find your subtropical vegetation. But as we keep on going or as we keep moving upwards, that means as we keep on increasing the elevation, what will happen to the temperature? Your temperature will start to decrease. And as a result of this, as the temperature starts to get cooler, the type of vegetation keeps on changing. For an example, here we have subtropical. Then again in these areas, what can we have? Here we can have your temperate vegetation. Then we can have, as we keep on increasing the height, what can we have? We can have alpine vegetations as well, right? Then we can have temperate grasslands as well, fine. So your type of vegetation or natural vegetation is directly dependent upon your temperature, fine. And temperature is one of the main factor that determines the type of vegetation. All right. Then we have your photoperiod or sunlight, that is the variation in duration of sunlight at different places is due to the differences in latitude, altitude, season as well as duration of the day, which we have talked about. And due to longer duration of sunlight, your trees goes faster in the summer period, fine. Then we have precipitation. Now in India, almost the entire rainfall is brought in by the advancing southwest monsoon, which we have already talked about, and the retreating northeast monsoons, fine. and areas of heavy rainfall will have more dense vegetation as compared to areas of less amount of rainfall. Now for an example, if I take into consideration your northeast India or the western part of the Western Ghats, in these type of areas India is receiving the maximum amount of rainfall. So what do you think the kind of vegetation we will find there? Of course we will find there evergreen forest, right? Then if we move towards the central part of India where we have scanty amount of rainfall, what type of vegetation can we expect? We can expect your deciduous type of forest, right? Then we can expect your thorn type of forest, thorns and scrubs, right? So your temperature, always remember your temperature and precipitation, which are nothing but elements of climate, plays the most dominant role in determining the natural vegetation of a particular place. All right. So this was about the different factors. Then moving on, let us understand this concept which is called as ecosystem. Now this we have already talked about in the lower classes. Kindly go through it if you have forgotten about it. But also since it is given in this NCERT, let us go through it. Now plants occur in distinct group of communities. So if there is an area, here we will have a group of community of plants, right? A distinct group of communities, right? Then plants occur in distinct group of communities in areas having similar climatic conditions. Now suppose in this particular region the climatic conditions are uniform. Alright, if the climatic conditions are uniform, meaning in these areas the type of plant group or the type of the natural vegetation that we will see, it will also be a distinct group of community, right? Fine. And the nature of the plant in an area to a large extent determines the animal life in that area. Now suppose in this designated area we have a particular group of communities of plants, right? So the type of animals which are also found there will be directly or indirectly dependent upon the type of the plant communities which are found there, right? Okay, so when the vegetation is altered, the animal life will also change. So if the vegetation changes, the fauna will also change. So both flora and fauna are interdependent on each other, right? So all the plants and animals in an area or in a designated area are interdependent and interrelated to each other in their physical environment, thus forming an ecosystem, right? So in this particular designated area, all right, here both the plants and animals are interdependent on each other and they are interrelated to each other, which in turn results in creation of a ecosystem, right? So these plant species, these animal species, they are not only interacting with each other, but they are also interacting with the abiotic components which are found there. So what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a designated area where your biotic components are interacting with each other along with the abiotic components, right? Always remember, an ecosystem will always have a designated area, all right? Then a very large ecosystem on land having distinct types of vegetations and animal life, it is called as a biome. Now what is a biome? We have already understood this in your lower classes, right? So what is a biome? It is a large ecosystem on land, very important, right? So the type of ecosystem, now when we talk about ecosystem, it can be a saltwater ecosystem, it can be a freshwater ecosystem. Your lakes are also example of ecosystem. Then we have your land area to be a particular type of ecosystem, right? So a very large ecosystem only on land, all right, having distinct vegetation and animal, we call this as a biome. So biome is an example of land ecosystem, very important. Fine. And the biomes, now how do we classify the biomes? Now we have understood what are biomes. So biomes are nothing but land ecosystem. It does not include your marine ecosystem, right? So this land ecosystem will also have different categories or different variations, and these variations in the land ecosystem is identified on the basis of plant species which are found in that particular area, and the kind of plant species that we will find in that particular area will in turn determine the type of fauna which is found in that area, creating a unique ecosystem. Fine. All right. So this was about ecosystem and what is a biome. Now let us talk about your different types of vegetation. All right. Now the following are considered to be the major types of vegetations which are found in our country. We have your tropical evergreen forest, we have tropical deciduous forest, we have tropical thorn forest and scrubs, then we have your mountain forest, that means the forests which are found in the mountains, and then we have the mangrove forest. Fine. So let us first go through your tropical evergreen forest. Now this we have already dealt with in the lower classes. Let us go through this again. Now these type of forests are restricted to heavy rainfall areas of Western Ghats, mostly in the western part of the Western Ghats, then in the island groups of Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar, the upper parts of Assam, as well as along the Tamil Nadu coast. Now these areas are very important for you to understand from your examination perspective. Alright, always remember the areas where this type of vegetations are found, because these are always asked in your examination, right? And where are they found? They are found in areas having more than 200 centimeter of rainfall with a short dry season. Very important point again from your exams perspective, right? Then the trees here can reach heights up to 60 meters. Again, very important point, right? Or even above 60 meters. And since the region is warm and wet throughout the year, it has a luxuriant vegetation of all kinds. We find the trees, we find shrubs, we find creepers, giving it a multi-layered structure. Very important. One of the distinct characteristics of a tropical evergreen forest is that it is multi-layered, meaning at the base we will have presence of what? At the base we will have presence of shrubs, right? Then above the shrubs we will have presence of trees, and above the trees we will have presence of big trees, meaning it looks like a multi-layered structure, right? So this multi-layered structure is a distinct feature of your tropical evergreen forest. Always keep this in mind, right? And there is no definite time for the trees to shed the leaves, and that is the reason why it appears evergreen always. Now why so? This we have already understood in the lower classes, right? And as such these forests appear green all throughout the year, right? And this point again very important. What are your examples of tropical evergreen forest trees? It includes your ebony, it includes mahogany, we have rosewood, we have rubber, and we have cinchona. Very important again from exams perspective, right? Then the next forest that we have is your tropical deciduous forest, or which is also called as the monsoonal forest or monsoon forest. Fine. So these are the most widespread forests of India. Very important point. So out of all the natural vegetations that we find in India, which is the most widespread? It is your tropical deciduous forest, and they are also called as a monsoon forest, and they are spread over the region which receives rainfall between 200 to 70 centimeter, right? And if I go back to your tropical evergreen, it was found in areas which was receiving more than 200 centimeter of rainfall, and in areas where we will have 200 to 70 centimeter of rainfall, we will find tropical deciduous forest, right? And trees of this forest type will shed their leaves for about 6 to 8 weeks in the dry summer, and therefore during the summer times this type of forest appears to be naked, and therefore they are not evergreen. Fine. Then on the basis of availability of water, these forests are further divided into moist and dry deciduous. So whenever I talk about your tropical deciduous forest, they are of two types: moist deciduous forest and dry deciduous forest, and this classification is on the basis of precipitation. For an example, if I have to talk about your moist deciduous forest, it is found in those areas which are receiving rainfall between 200 and 100 centimeter. And on the other hand, your dry deciduous forests are found in those areas which are receiving rainfall between 70 to 100 centimeter. Fine. So 70 to 100 is dry. From 100 to 200 we will have the moist deciduous forest. Very important, right? Okay. So the former is found in areas receiving rainfall between 200 and 100, and this forest exists therefore mostly in the eastern parts of the country. For example, we will find this in your northeast India, we will find along the foothills of the Himalayas, we find it in Jharkhand, we find it in West Odisha, we find it in Chhattisgarh, right? Your western parts of Odisha and Chhattisgarh, and then we also find it along the eastern slopes of the Western Ghats. Again, these areas again important from exams perspective. Fine. If I have to talk about the tree species which are found here, your teak is the most dominant species of this forest. Your rest includes your bamboos, we will have sal, shisham, we have sandalwood, we have kher, we have kusum, we have arjun, we have mulberry, right, and other commercially important species. Okay, then the next forest that we have is the dry deciduous forest. So the areas we have talked about, the species that we have talked about, these are examples of your moist deciduous forest, right? Now dry deciduous forest, like I have already stated, it is found in areas receiving rainfall between 100 centimeter to 70 centimeter, and these forests are found in the rainier parts of your peninsular plateau and along the plains of Bihar and UP. Again, very important point. And these are open stretches in which we find sal, we find teak, we find people, we find neem, right? And a large part of this region has been cleared for cultivation, and some parts are also used for grazing, because the type of soil which is found here is very fertile, and therefore the land or the forest has been felled here for the purpose of agriculture. The next forest that we have is the thorn forest and the scrubs, right? Now these are the forests which are found in areas or regions which receives rainfall of less than 70 centimeter, right? Then this type of vegetation is found where in the northwestern parts of the country, which includes the semi-arid areas of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, UP and Haryana. Again, very important from exams perspective. Then the species of plants would include your acacia, it would include palms, it could include your euphorbias, it can include your cacti, right? And the trees here are highly scattered and have long roots penetrating deep into the soil. Now the question is, why do they have long roots? Because here the water table is very low, and therefore the plants, in order to take up water, they need to have longer roots, right? So that is the reason why they have longer roots, in order to suck up water from deep below, right? So trees are scattered, very important. They have long roots penetrating deep into the soil in order to get moisture or water, and the stems are succulent to conserve water. Fine, very important point. Then the leaves are mostly thick and small in order to minimize evaporation or transpiration, right? And this forest will give away to thorn forest and shrub in the arid areas. Very important, right? Now all these points, why the leaves are thick, why the leaves are small, right? All this has been discussed in your lower classes, right? If you have forgotten, kindly go through it, right? Okay, then the next type of forest that we have is your mountain forest or your mountain forest. So these are the forests which are found in the mountainous areas, right? So in your mountainous areas, the decrease in temperature with increasing altitude, which we have already discussed, leads to corresponding changes in the natural vegetation. So as we move from the base to the greater heights of the mountains, the vegetation keeps on changing depending upon the temperature. So as such, there is a succession of natural vegetation belts in the same order as we see from the tropical towards the tundra region. So depending upon the climatic factors, we see that across the latitude, for an example, in the equatorial area, your temperature is high, your rainfall is very high. Therefore, what do we see? We see evergreen forest. Then as we move above, your rainfall will decrease and we will see tropical forest. Then as we go up the latitude, your temperature gets cooled down and we get temperate forest. Then above this, we see the presence of tundra forest, right? So in the same manner, from the equator towards the polar areas, as we keep on moving, we are seeing a change in your natural vegetation. Similarly, as we go above, right, from the base of a mountain to the greater heights, so a similar succession of natural vegetation is seen. All right, fine, understood this point? All right. Then what is the second point? The wet temperate type of forests are found between a height of 1000 to 2000 meters. So from 0 to 1000, what we will find? We will find the presence of tropical and subtropical forest. Then between the height of 1000 to 2000, as your temperature decreases, we will see presence of wet temperate type of forest, right? Your evergreen broadleaf trees such as oaks and chestnuts are predominant in this particular area, right? Then between 1500 to 300 meters, again, as the temperature decreases, we will get temperate forest containing coniferous trees. Fine. And this includes examples like pine, deodar, we will have silver fir, we have spruce, and we have cedar as well. And this forest covers mostly in the southern slopes of the Himalayas, places having high altitude in the southern and the northeast India. And at higher elevations, your temperate grasslands are very common. So these type of successions that I am talking about, where are they found? They are found along the southern slopes of the Himalayas. They are found along the your southern and the northeastern part of India as well, right? Then excuse me. All right, so now we have understood that the type of vegetations that we see up to a height of 3000 meter, right? Then what happens as we grow to a greater height? So at high altitudes, generally more than 3600 meters above the sea level, your temperate forest and grasslands will give away to the alpine vegetation, right? So up to 3000 meters, what did we see? We saw the presence of your temperate type of forest having coniferous trees. Then between 3000 to 35,000 we have seen, 3500 we have seen that there will be presence of temperate grasslands. And as we go above 3500 or above 3600 meters, this temperate forest and your grasslands will give away to your alpine vegetation. Very, very important. And this includes examples like silver fir, junipers, we have pines, we have birches as well. Fine. Now, however, they get progressively stunted as they approach the snow line, because in the snow line your temperature is very, very low, and because of this extreme climatic factors, it is very difficult for a vegetation to survive, and therefore even if there is vegetation found there, it is highly stunted in nature. And ultimately through shrubs and scrubs they merge into the alpine grasslands. So after this we will find the presence of alpine grasslands, and these are used extensively for grazing by nomadic tribes like Gujars, which we have understood or which we have talked about in the previous class, Bakarwals, that also we have talked about in the previous class. And at higher altitudes your mosses and lichens form part of the tundra vegetation. So at the greatest height we will find the presence of your tundra vegetation, which examples include your mosses and lichens, right? Fine. Then the next vegetation that we have is your mangrove forest, right? Again, which we have talked about. Now mangrove forests are found in the tidal regions, that is your coastal areas, right? So the mangrove tidal forests are found in areas of coast which are influenced by your tides, that is your high tide and low tide. Your mud and silt gets accumulated on such coast where we have the presence of tides. Your dense mangroves are common varieties with roots of the plants which are submerged under the water. Very, very important characteristics of a mangrove forest. In a mangrove forest, your roots of the plants are submerged under water. That means it is under your saline conditions. Fine. Your deltas of Ganga, Mahanadi, Krishna, right? Then Godavari, Kaveri are covered by such vegetation, meaning along the entire eastern coast of India we will see the presence of mangrove forest. Then in the Ganga Brahmaputra delta, your Sundari trees are found, which provides durable hard timber, and it is from this Sundari tree we get the name of the Sundarbans delta, right, which was mentioned again in one of the previous classes. Then your examples include your palm, coconut, kiora, we have agar, which also grows in some parts of the delta. Fine. Then your Royal Bengal tiger is the famous animal which are found in this forest, and turtles, crocodiles, gharials, snakes are also found in this type of forest. Fine. So this was about the different types of vegetations that we see in India, and you can anytime expect questions to come from this section. All right. Because many a times in UPSC prelims we have seen question from the section of vegetation, right? Now talking about wildlife, again from exam perspective this is not very important, because this topic will only become important when we move into the subject of environment and ecology. Fine. So let us still go through the points which are being given here. Now like flora, India is also rich in its fauna, that is your wildlife, and it has approximately about your 9000 animal species, and the country has about your 2000 species of bird, and they constitute about 13% of the world's total. There are about 2546 species of fish, which accounts for nearly 12% of the world's stock, and it also shares between 5 to 8% or 5 and 8% of the world's amphibians, reptiles as well as your mammals. Fine. Then elephants are considered to be the most majestic animals among the mammals. Now where are your elephants found? They are found in your hot wet forest of Assam, Karnataka as well as Kerala. Then we have the famous one-horned rhinoceros, which is found in the swampy and marshy lands of Assam and West Bengal. For example, we have the Kaziranga National Park. Then India is considered to be the only country in the world where we see presence of both tigers as well as your lions. Then the natural habitat of Indian lion is of course your Gir forest, which is found in the state of Gujarat. Then in the rivers, lakes and coastal areas, we see the presence of turtles, crocodiles, gharials, etc. Now this is also very important topic from your environment and ecology subject. Very important topic. Now when we move into the subject, we will talk in more details about this, right? Now to protect the flora and fauna of this country, the government has taken many steps. For example, we have the concept of biosphere reserves. So in India, we have in total 18 biosphere reserves, right, which has been set up in the country to protect the flora and fauna. Like for example, we have the cold deserts of Uttarakhand, right? Then cold desert of your Himachal. Then we have your Nanda Devi in Uttarakhand. Then we have the Kanchenjunga, which is in the state of Sikkim, right? So then we have your Manas, we have Dibru Saikwa, which is in Assam. Then we have your Dihang Diban in Arunachal. Then we have Nokrek in Meghalaya, right? Then we have the Kutch in Gujarat region, right? So overall, how many do we have? We have in total 18 biosphere reserves. And when we move into the subject of environment and ecology, we will talk specifically about these biosphere reserves one by one, because they are very important. Because it is not only important from the perspective of this biosphere reserve is found in which state, but we also have to understand that in these biosphere reserves, what are the different characteristics, what are the different types of animals and plant species which are found there, if any rivers are passing through these biosphere reserves or not. So it's very in detail that we have to go through this topic, all right, but it is beyond the ambit of your geography subject, all right. Don't worry, we will go through all this, fine. So your examples include the Sundarbans, West Bengal, Nanda Devi, we have Gulf of Mannar in Tamil Nadu, then we have the Nilgiris, Nokrek, Great Nicobar, Manas in Assam, Simlipal is that we have in the state of Odisha, then we have your Panchmadi in Madhya Pradesh, right? Then we have your Achanak, Amarkantak, right? Then everything on all of this which has been included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserve. Now what is this World Network of Biosphere Reserve? We will talk about this, right? Then your financial and technical assistance is provided to many botanical gardens by the government since 92. Then we have your Project Tiger, we have Project Rhino, we have Project Great Indian Bastard, and many other ecological development projects. We have around 103 national parks, 535 wildlife sanctuaries and zoological gardens which are set up in order to take care of your natural heritage, right? Now in this topic, one more important point that I have to mention again this topic will be dealt in great details in environment and ecology. That is, out of all these 18 biosphere reserves, 11 of the biosphere reserves has been internationally recognized by UNESCO, all right. So this is just a factual information. Out of this 18, 11 has been internationally recognized by UNESCO under a program which is called as your MAB program, that is your Man and Biosphere program, right, which we will talk about in the environment subject, all right. So this is all about your today's topic. Then let us deal with two questions before we conclude. First one, to which of the following types of vegetation does your rubber belong to, which we have already talked about in today's class. Your rubber belongs to tropical evergreen, that is your option D, right? And which of the following biosphere reserve is not included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserve? Now this question we have not discussed. This is in order to generate curiosity in your mind. If you really want to crack this examination, there are certain topics which you also have to go through yourself, right? So like I have already mentioned, this will be talked about in your environment and ecology subject, but if you're curious, you will go home today or when you are at your place, you will go through this program and you will see the 18 biosphere reserves and which are the 11 which are included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. And out of all this that you see, right, your Manas National Park, which is in Assam, is not included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserve, fine. So your option A is correct here, all right. Thank you. So I hope you understood today's topic, where we have initially began by defining what is natural vegetation. Then moving on, we have also looked into what are the different factors which affects the type of natural vegetation which will be found in a particular location. Then moving on, we have also talked about the different types of natural vegetation which is found in India. Then we have also talked about ecosystem, and concluding we have also talked about your wildlife which is found in India. So with this we are done with the topic of natural vegetation and wildlife, and in the next class we will begin with a new topic where we are going to talk about population. So stay tuned to Scholar for more such videos.